we're going into project 1 of the Soft Circuits kit, which is to make the light up bracelet. We're going to be pulling out this bag. In it you can see there's the ChickTech sticker, coin cell batteries, and a bunch of other things, kind of like a smorgasbord of stuff. I pulled out 2 pieces of felt. One, I will be making a flower as an embellishment for the bracelet, and then the second one is going to be for the bracelet itself. I'm going to make the band with it. I'm using white because I wanted to make sure that you can see the stitches, but you should choose any color you're interested in. Alright, I'm going to pull out the tools that for the supplies we'll need in this bag. Won't need this, but it certainly is cool. Going to need some needles. This is the coin cell battery. Conductive thread, so this actually makes our circuit work and also sews our stuff together. Battery holder. This is a needle threader, and it's a pretty cool tool that we'll be able to use. Now the bag has one LED in here. I don't know what color it is. If I like the color, I'm going to keep it. If it's a color I don't like, we have a whole bag full of resistors and LEDs. Just trade it out for one that you do like. But remember, you now don't have that color for the tote bag. So something to think of. Lastly are the snaps. There are 2 sets. Just pull out one. The other one is if you wanted to use it for the tote bag, so save it for later. Now for the snaps, there's a male and a female side. Make sure you get the 2. Alright, we're ready to start making our bracelet. First, create your embellishment. I created a flower. I'm going to cut out my flower and then we're going to make the wrist strap for the bracelet. So I'm actually going to have this be the underside, so when I put it on you won't put it on the strap, you won't see my lines that I cut out with, or you'll just have to cut a little more in so you don't see the lines. So for the wrist strap, they recommend 10 inches by 1.5 inches. I don't have a ruler, but guess what? This LED is 1.5 inches. So if I mark my points from here on either side, maybe a point in the middle for good measure. I can use my book and just make sure it is measured across. Now 10 inches. Well, this book is 10 inches long, so I know the end's right there. Just gonna make a mark here and cut it out. I'm going to measure this and make sure it's where I want it to be. You need some, at least maybe 1 inch or a thumb's width of overlap to make sure that you can get your snap on the way you like. That looks pretty good. I'm good. I like where I want it to be. I'm going to put my flower here. You can see it. Just kind of like start gauging where I want things placed. So if I want my flower here, you're going to start lining up everything where you want it to be, so when you sew it, you'll know where it needs to go. I know I need one of the snap pieces. I'm using the male side, and I'll put the female on the underside. Then I'm going to put this battery holder, and this is probably the most important part, is what direction to put it in. Just so you know where these little tabs are, that is the negative side, and with electricity there is polarity, and our LEDs need to know what direction matters. So having these lined up is really important. So we want positive to go with the positive and the negative to go with the negative. Well, this is negative. I'm going to put it here just so I have it down. And then LEDs have has a positive and a negative side. The shorter side is negative, or ground. That's what it's called. I want to put my positive side, that long side, in this direction. So I have it laid out. Then when I wrap it around and connect it, the negative side will match the negative. So then this piece will just go underneath and sew it in that direction. So I know my layout. You could even tape it to make sure it's going to work ahead of time, but we're going to go ahead and start sewing. So I'm going to just place these components kind of in a line so I know when to do what next. So here we go. We're going to start sewing. I'm going to get my thread out. And they recommend 20 inches. Well, how long is 20 inches, right? Well, we just cut 10 inches with our fabric, so if I rolled it back, I now have 20. I'm going to cut it here. Alright, we're going to start threading the needle. You're going to need the needle threader, the needle, and your thread. First, we're going to put the needle through the threader, and you're going to put it through the tip of that opening little wire. I'm going to stick it through, and now it's just hanging around. Then I'm going to take the thread and put it through this very large hole that we have. Much easier for those who can't see that hole on the needle. Now I'm going to, and you kind of have to be a little careful right here, kind of pinch this end, or otherwise sometimes the wire of the needle threader comes loose, and we don't want that. I'm going to push my needle all the way out. And now you can see that my needle is threaded. Alright, next I do have to put in a knot at the end of my thread. Just a standard knot. I'm going to put it around my finger, bring it through, and pull it towards the end. I'm going to do a double knot because I always think it's just a little bit better with thread. You never know if you have a loose fabric and the knot goes through the fabric. Alright, I have my double knot there. Okay. Now we can start sewing this piece right here. It has a couple different hole ports, and I'm going to go through and just weave them back and forth. Alright, the snap is now sewed on, and I'm going to do a couple stitches, and I'll end up closing my stitches once I get to the end of this battery pack. So I'm going to lay everything out to make sure I have things where I want them to be. That looks pretty good. And then spacing wise, maybe a little more. I just kind of like mine all centered. Alright, that looks good. So I want to go to right about here. And I'm going to sew this in. So a little bit about this battery. Remember, batteries with LEDs are directional, so we have to think of where the positive and negative is of the electricity. So when I look at this battery pack right here, I can see that this piece, the little parts where it kind of makes that sound, you know, you can clip it in, that bottom part is negative, and we want the negative facing that snap that we just sewed. Then our positive will be going to our LED, and then we'll go on out. So I'm going to stitch just back and forth in nice straight row. Okay, now I'm going to sew in the battery. So I did a couple stitches over, and there is a very tiny, tiny little hole that we're sewing through. And then we're going to close this section of sewing and we'll start up again. So I have my needle down here and I'm just going to bring it part way up so I can fit it through that hole, that tiny little hole. So you can see right now it went through the hole. I'm going to bring it all the way up and sew as close to that little outer edge of that hole and push it in. Now we want a good strong conductivity of electricity, so we need more than one wrapping around it. So I'm going to do at least 2 more times to get that nice strong section of circuitry to light up well. So you can see my stitches are there. I'm going to go to, and you can see it's loose. That's because I'm closing it off. I'm going to go to the back side. And this is the first time I've showed you how to put a knot into stitches. So this is kind of an important part. I'm going to put my needle under the thread. See, it's under. I'm going to bring it through, but not all the way. So right now you see there is a hole. We're going to put our needle through that hole to tie that knot. And through the hole, this is a sewing knot. So we always like to double knot even our shoes. So I'm going to just go back around and do it one more time. So under the last stitch, leave that gap for a little hole and through the hole. This is a sewing knot. All right, I can cut it off. Okay, I want to make sure I had that knot, that little tag from the other end when I made my first knot from starting it up. We gotta make sure that's cut off because we don't want to short circuit ourselves. Okay. I still have more thread, so I'm going to just re-put a new knot at the end of my thread. And remember to double knot. Now we need to go up and sew in the positive side of our battery pack holder. So I'm going to go underneath from the back side, and wow, I got it on the first try through the hole. Make sure you get through that hole. Alright, the next part I'm going to sew how far I want to go with the flower. So it's going to be a little tricky because I need to make sure I get the LED actually through and all the way through. So I actually can get my LED set up before I sew over. Now, you're going to actually want to take your coin cell out of its container. And a great way for you to learn about LEDs and the positive and negative side is with our coin cell. Plus, we get to see what color it lights up to. So, one direction, if I hold it this way, it won't light up. That's because the negative side was touching the positive. The negative needs to touch the negative, and the positive needs to touch the positive. Put it on the positive side, and I have a blue LED. Looks pretty great. I'm happy with that. If you don't like yours, you can always go into the Soft Circuits kit and choose a different LED amongst the LED and resistor pack. Just know if they don't have another one of that color, you may have sacrifice that one for the tote bag project. All right, so I know the direction. I know that this is the positive side, so I'm going to push through my LED through the fabrics, and I'm going to use that long side, which is positive, the long side positive to the positive. So I'm going to first grab my flower and push it through. This is probably the hardest part. Be gentle, because you know you could potentially hurt yourself. So just be careful with the felt and slowly push your LED through. All right, so I have it through one fabric. Now I just need to get it all the way through the other one. All right, it's kind of hard to see, but mine is now through on both sides. I'm gonna flip it upside down and always remind myself positives that way, negatives that way. All right, so I'm actually going to bend them over. So I'm gonna bend and bend. So now you can see that they're bent over on either side. And I could take a pencil and just curl that wire around. So it makes a little hook. Do you see how that is now a hook? I'm going to do that on the opposite side. I could use a pencil as a guide, or even my pinky finger could be a guide at pushing it around. Now, looks pretty good. I have it bent over on either side. Now, a couple things. You need to make sure that these metal pieces don't touch each other. Now, that is important to make sure that the connection doesn't create a short. So make sure they don't touch. I always like to go here on the positive, or on the flip side of the fabric, to make sure that my LED is standing up the way I like to. Maybe you want yours flat, it's up to you. Looks just the way I want it to look. So now I can take my needle that's still been there and threaded. I haven't done anything with, I've just been hanging out on the other side. And I'm going to continue stitching all the way to the underneath of that side. Now I want to flip it up a little bit to get through so I don't see the stitches. Later on, if I want, I could hot glue it down. But right now we're not going to do that. All right, so I'm at the point where I can sew through my metal wire. And I'm going to do it just as many times as I did the battery holder. I'm going to go between 2 and 3 times around so I get that good electrical connection. So you can see I went through the hoop. And I'm going to get as close to that hoop as I can for a nice tight stitch and good connection. Okay, that was 3 times for me. I'm going to go back to the other side of the circuit, the stitch, and I'm going to do that knot again. Remember, I'm going to go under my stitches. Oops. Now if you get snags, just be careful about that. And I'm going to have a little loop. There's my loop, and I'm going to put my needle through that loop to make that knot. It's always best to do a double knot, so we're going to do it one more time. So through once, under my stitches, I have that hole, and closing the loop. All right, I'm going to cut it off and go and do the last section of stitching. Okay, remember that straggler wire, you see that straggler thread when we started it? You gotta cut that off, so I'm gonna cut that off now. Okay, we're on our last portion right here. Now, you gotta think of, when we get to it, we're gonna put our snap on, and when you think about when you snap something together, it has to be on the other side of the fabric. All right. If you look at your thread, you'll have to decide at this point if you have enough thread to make it through. I think I can do it. With that 20 inches, it does look like there's enough thread to make it through. I'm gonna put in one more knot. Remember, double knots are best. Right. I'm going to go through on the opposite side and make sure I'm not going through the flower or whatever you've designed, maybe a star or a dog, a dinosaur, a robot, anything that makes it interesting for you. All right. Remember, I'm going to go around 3 times. It's up to you how many times you want to go around, but you do want to make sure you get a good solid electrical conductivity. So you want to loop around a couple times through that metal wire. We got to make sure that little straggler is sticking out so we can cut that later. Right. So I went around once, twice, this is my 3rd time. So I'm now gonna stitch to the end here. I'm gonna put it on the underside, so the opposite side of that circuit, and I'm gonna sew twice around each of the hole openings. Now, it's all sewn. I'm going to put in the battery. Make sure you put in the positive side on top. And you just push it in like that. All right, the moment of truth is connecting your circuit. Mine turned on. Pretty awesome. Now I can wear it and be super fashionable. Ta-da!